Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am freaking outstanding. I am in such a good mood today. I just want everybody to know that right off the bat. I'm in a good mood today, as should everybody else at our station be in a good mood today. And all of our great friends at 102.9 The Buzz should be in a great mood today. Ian, you should be in a great mood today.
Feeling pretty good.
I tell you what, man, I'm in a good mood today. Today's a good day. And I'm in such a good mood. I'm in a thankful mood. Thankful for the great audience we have and for TD, who will be here in an hour for the TD Power Hour, and the great insights we get from him and Trevor and Fitz and Corey and Chris and Joe and Caroline, and just, man, I'm happy today. I'm so happy today, Ian, that I'm going to start by giving the audience something, because I'm in such a good mood.
Let's do it.
Caller 5 at 615-737-1025. You'll win a pair of tickets to see Billy Currington at Ascend Amphitheater on May 18th. Good luck on that one. That is my gift to you because I am in a good mood today. Now, let's get to the Titans' schedule. That is not necessarily why I'm in a good mood, but I'm not in a bad mood about the Titans' schedule either. Because when it came down the pipe, and the truth is, we get the schedule about 15 minutes before everybody else, but we're not allowed to release it until 7 o'clock. So when it came down the pipe and I looked at the schedule, I said to myself, I was almost shocked. I said to myself, this is the most fair and balanced schedule I have ever seen the Titans have, at least that I can remember, ever since I've been doing this. It's almost like the NFL, when putting together the Titans schedule, said, all right, we are going to put together a schedule that is not too easy, not too hard, that doesn't have a stretch with a murderer's row gauntlet that can derail the season. We're not going to put Buffalo and Detroit up front and make Will Levis start off 0-2. We're not going to pad it with rookie quarterbacks or second-year guys, the way the NFL did for the Chicago Bears on Caleb Williams' start. No. We're going to make this the fairest schedule we have. I mean, I was shocked by this. For starters, the first 4 games, very balanced. All teams that are, the win total, Chicago, 8.5. The Jets, 9.5. The Packers, 10.5. Miami, 9.5. That's league average. Now, the Packers are a little bit above league average, but, that's league average for the most part. The Titans have no brutal stretch in the schedule where there's 3 or 4 playoff franchise quarterback teams in a row. In 2021, there was a stretch. We looked at it. We said, this is going to make or break their season. It was Buffalo, Kansas City, Indianapolis, and the Rams. The Titans won all 4 of those games and went on to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. The next year, they had a similar stretch. Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Dallas, they were all wrapped together, and that was the part of the season. Green Bay, I think, was before that, and they beat Green Bay. But that part of the season broke them. They don't have anything like that in this schedule. I mean, yeah, there's some playoff teams back-to-back. Green Bay and Miami were playoff teams last year, but then you get a bye. Buffalo and Detroit back-to-back, but then you get New England. The first Houston game, and I think we could say Houston right now is probably the biggest team on the schedule, given the fact that it's the division winner from last year and they've got a quarterback. The first Houston game is sandwiched with rookie quarterbacks from Minnesota and Washington. I wouldn't say that the schedule is easy. Again, I was hoping it was going to be Minnesota week 1, New England week 2, Washington week 3, Indy week 4. It's not that. But I actually think the schedule the Titans have is truly fair and it's truly balanced. There are good teams, quote-unquote good teams, all throughout the schedule. Green Bay's at the beginning of the schedule. Buffalo and Detroit are in the middle of the schedule. Houston is at the end of the schedule. I mean, this is, again, I don't see any complaining that I could have about the schedule to kind of give it up. Wow, they really screwed you. There are some things I don't like about the schedule. There are some things I do like about the schedule. But there was nothing that I looked at the schedule and said, oh, yes, or looked at it and said, oh, no. It's almost like the NFL again. And when they put all these schedules together, it's like putting this giant puzzle piece together. And I highly doubt that they look at the Titans and say, just knowing what I know of the Titans and how the league office operates around the Titans, I highly doubt they said, hey, when we put our schedules together this year, let's make sure we give the Titans the fairest possible schedule we can give them. But I think that's actually what happened. I mean, I don't see what could we possibly complain about. I mean, it's not like there's oh, wow, they're playing Kansas City on Thursday night, and Kansas City's coming off of a bye. There's nothing like that. In fact, the Titans aren't playing any teams that are coming off of byes this year. So I got to say, I think that this is an incredibly fair schedule. And I know, for a show that is either it's the best or the worst, to say it's incredibly fair and balanced is not something you're used to. Now, there are some things I like about the schedule. There are some things I don't like about the schedule. For starters, I love the fact that it's pretty much outside of the Charger game and the Dolphin game, all noon kicks on Sunday. Now, I don't know if that is a me thing or if that is an everybody thing. Ian, are you preferable to the noon kicks on Sunday for the Titans?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's an everybody thing. I don't want to say it's an everybody thing, but I think it's an everybody thing.
It's the routine. You just want to get up, do our thing, watch the game, be done.
Yeah. And then, the game's over at 3 o'clock, and whatever the big games are that afternoon, you can watch a Cowboys game, whatever the Sunday night game is. And for me, doing the pregame show, I like doing the pregame show at 9:30. I don't like doing the pregame show when there are other football games that are on. I don't like doing it. And I think for a young quarterback and a new rookie coach, I think it's good, again, to have the same routine pretty much every week. Very few cold weather games. It's another thing I like. And I really like that 4 of the last 5 games on the schedule are AFC South games. So, like, if Brian Callahan is the Sean McVay, shows up to a team that was broken and immediately overnight makes the second-year quarterback a star, if that's what Brian Callahan is, and who knows if he is or he isn't, but if he really gets this baby cooking by the time that they get towards the end of the season, you could have a run at the AFC South because you're playing all these division games at the end. And remember that the Titans were 1-4 in 2002, the year they ended up making it to the playoffs in the AFC Championship game. But they won the division, and it was really salvaged by the fact that they were 6-0 in the AFC South. So I do like that. I like 4 of the last 5 against the South, the last 3 against Houston, Indy, and Jacksonville. Now, there are a couple things I don't like about the schedule. I don't like the early bye. I would prefer that the Titans have the bye around halfway through the season, week 8, week 9. And I'd rather it be later than earlier because when you get the bye through after week 4, you'll have some injuries, but it won't be kind of the whole piled up like everybody needs a break right now, which you usually do have by week 8 or week 9. I remember a couple years ago, the year that the Titans had the number 1 seed, they had a late bye, and they went to New England around Thanksgiving, and I think their bye was the next week. And they went to New England, and it was like everybody was hurt. And so I prefer, a week 8, week 9 bye with a 17th game. I really don't like the week 5 bye. But then again, it's during the baseball playoffs, so at least I'll, have something else to pay attention to. But as far as how it goes for the team, I'm not sure I like that. All in all, the NFL was incredibly fair to the Titans. This is a schedule that if you've got a team, this is a forgiving schedule. And what I mean by that is you get in a rough patch because you've got a young quarterback where you lose at home to Green Bay and then you go on the road Monday Night Football, lose to the Dolphins, and maybe you start the year 1-3, And for a lot of teams, it's like, oh, God, this is panic mode, and here comes reset, haven't played a division game yet, have the bye, now here's Indianapolis. If you lose the 2 games that, I think that you probably should lose, in the middle there with Detroit on the road and Buffalo on the road, I think it's Buffalo first and then Detroit. If you lose to Buffalo and then you lose to Detroit, it may feel like, the sky is falling. Here's New England after it. And again, if Will Levis becomes the guy, and if Brian Callahan is the coach, and if this team really bonds and melds and everything else, I've always said wait till November if a new offensive coordinator or play caller's in, a new quarterback's in, a new head coach is in. You always wait till about November 1st to really see the changes. Well, you still have the meat of the AFC South schedule still in front of you. This schedule was incredibly fair and incredibly balanced. And I don't know what strings the Titans pulled. They didn't get a great schedule, but they didn't get a bad schedule. And I have to give the NFL credit. Again, I don't think they went out of their way to do this for the Titans. My gut is they probably went out of their way to do this for everybody. Hey, let's be fair here. We got TV partners to accommodate, and but this is a very fair schedule for the Titans. Very fair. 615-737-1025, your reaction to the Titans schedule. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? 615-737-1025. And there was something yesterday that I was just dead wrong about. I'll explain. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
I know that schedule tells you exactly the way the league feels about the Titans at this point, right? I just think there's just too many question marks to really have the answers right now to be like, okay, guys, I predict that the Titans are going to win this division. Everything goes back to will. And those are the conversations I have with GMs all across the league, even head coaches, over at the league, at the owners' meetings. Just anytime I'm trying to get a pulse on how everyone feels about the Titans, it's always the same thing. Is Will going to be the guy? I think there was enough seen. There were some great moments he had last year where I think fans can probably get really excited about it and believe that this is it. I know in the building, they obviously have tons of confidence.
That was Diana to this morning on Robbie and Rex Road saying, people around the league are like, I don't know, can Levis play? I have no idea. We'll see. And the schedule reflects that. So yesterday on the show, technically, I was wrong when I said I expected the Titans to have one primetime game, and I expected it to be a Thursday night football game. Now, I knew that the rule's gone that about everybody having a Thursday night game, but I still view Thursday night as kind of the worst national window. We've talked about this 1,000 times. Sunday night first, 3:30 Sunday, whether it's CBS or Fox 2, Monday night third, Thursday night fourth. And so I figured you'd get one, they throw you a bone, you and Indy, you and Green Bay, Thursday night football, Cincinnati maybe, Thursday night football, Al Michaels, they'll give them a good game they'll give them Dallas the week before, then they'll give them really, you're not getting on Sunday night football. You're not getting on and I was wrong because they got a Monday night football. But the more I thought about this, I actually think the spirit of the take, that is, you're going to get the single least amount of primetime exposure we can give you without not giving you a primetime game, you got. Because the Titans have one primetime game this year, and it isn't even really a primetime game because you're sharing that time slot with another game. Remember last year, the Monday night game you had against the Dolphins, which was probably Will Levis's best moment. The 2-minute drill, the last 5 minutes, that wild Dolphin game. Most of the country was watching Tommy DeVito upset the Green Bay Packers on ABC at the same time. Well, this year, you're in that split doubleheader again, and the sexier game on ABC is Seattle and Detroit. You're not going to get Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. You're going to get Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick. So the Titans don't even have a singular national primetime game this year. And look, it's not the end of the world. Who cares? And again, like Ian and I were talking about, maybe we're old curmudgeons over here now, but we prefer the noon kicks on Sunday anyways. But that is bad. That is bad. They're like, no Titans in primetime. And again, Ian, is it even really prime time if there's another game on the same time you're on?
I mean, technically you have to say it is.
But does it feel like it? Is it the spirit of prime time?
It doesn't have the same feel where you're the standalone game. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing
That's why
about
people used to like them.
The kind of, in the history of the NFL, Roone Ardledge and ABC started Monday Night Football. And what Monday Night Football was it was the game that every single television in America got. The game that everybody watched. I mean, that's like if Louisville plays Virginia at noon on the ACC network. I mean, technically that's a national game, right? You can get the ACC network, but it's not the same as if they're kicking off at 7:00 with Fowler and Herbie. That is the game. And so you really don't have a primetime game. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, when's the last time the Titans, and I know the Titans had some bad teams with those Munchak and Whisenhunt years, but I think during the Munchak and Whisenhunt era, that was the everybody has to play on Thursday night, era. When's the last time the Titans did not have a single standalone game for an entire season? And I think I went back and looked it up because I was like, did they play in prime time Vince Young's rookie year? And I'm like, I don't think they did. I looked it up today, and there were no Monday night or Sunday night games Vince Young's rookie year. So that's 2006. That's the last time that you didn't have a Sunday night game. You didn't have a Monday night game. I remember that 1999 season as a 10-year-old Titan fan. I felt like the Titans were just so disrespected. They ended up being 13-3, just so disrespected because they weren't on Monday Night Football. And so after they went to the Super Bowl the next year, they were on Monday Night Football 3 times, and I was like, we've arrived. That's how I felt. But even that 1999 season, they had a Sunday night game at Miami. They had a Thursday night game against the Raiders. Like, they played in primetime standalone. This is not a standalone game. This might be the lowest level of interest that the NFL television schedule has ever had about a Titans season. And I only say that because, again, when Vince Young was a rookie in 2006, there weren't 2 Christmas Day games on a Wednesday. There wasn't a Friday night game in Brazil and 5 international games and all the extra windows they've built out, a Thursday night every week. I mean, I've never seen the lack of primetime like this. Again, it's going back to the dark ages of the end of the Vince Young era. It's not a bad thing. Again, I prefer the noon kicks. I like doing the pregame show at 9:30. I also think that it's good for this team, go under the radar. They don't respect you. Go ahead and talk about it in the locker room. They don't respect us. Go ahead, beat your chest. Go ahead and say it. But it is a reflection that the league thinks that you stink. And so, again, use that as motivation. And then see how that makes you feel. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. One texter says, early bye week sucks, which I do agree with. Again, I would prefer a week 8, a week 9 bye, week 5 bye. Like, that's too early for a bye in a 17-game season. Texter says, please go look at the Steelers' schedule. They got screwed. Ian, is it worth looking at the Steelers' schedule?
The back half of their schedule, the last, 7, 8 weeks, it's like Baltimore twice, Cincinnati, the Browns twice, the Eagles. It's pretty rough.
So I don't have a problem with loading up with division games at the end of the season because that's the way that you dig yourself out. Like, Vrabel used to always say, and I know that now the text line has decided that Big Bad Vrabel was the worst thing that ever happened to the city of Nashville. But Vrabel, again, I think is a good coach. But Vrabel used to always say that the best teams are the teams that get better in October and November. That the teams that, whoever starts out the best, who cares? This isn't college football. So get better throughout October, November, December. You can get better. It's like the Titans having 4 of their last 5 against the South. I think it's great. Because if Brian Callahan's a really good coach and they start to build this thing up and they get better, then you've got a shot to win the division kind of the way Jacksonville did a couple years ago when they were hot trash at the beginning of the year. And then they came in here and beat you because the owner fired John Robinson on a Tuesday. And all of a sudden, because they're playing you twice at the end of the year, they've got a shot to climb back in this thing. They end up in the division round of the playoffs. In fact, if the NFL had put that Jacksonville game in 2022 in September, you'd have beat them. So I prefer playing the division games late, even for the Steelers, in kind of that black and blue AFC North division, because that's going to be where, hey, who has survived the first part of the season? Russell Wilson for the Steelers. Now he's acclimated. He's not going to be a learning curve against the Ravens.
Okay, their last stretch of games is home against Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincy, home against Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, home against the Chiefs, home against the Bengals.
Oh, throw that Chiefs in there, and it's like, I don't know about that one, Bob.
Mm-hmm. And there's a Thursday in there and a Wednesday in there.
And the Wednesday is the Christmas game.
It's the Christmas game against the Chiefs, so it is tough.
The Steelers are the kind of team that it's unfortunate. The Titans will never be this. The Steelers are the kind of team. The Packers are this way. Like, they're always, even if they suck, they're going to be used in primetime as like it's not a premium Mahomes game, like a Mahomes Lamar, Mahomes Burrow, Mahomes, I don't know what division they're playing in the NFC. I think they play San Francisco this year. So it's like, it's not that kind of ultra premium game, but it's like they can say, you want Christmas Day Netflix? You want to pay $75 million? Okay. We'll give you Mahomes. What's a average Mahomes game on the schedule this year? Well, we got the Chargers, we got the Steelers, we got Steelers. I mean, I feel bad for the Steelers. Josh says, I'm not trying to be a homer, but I think this helps the team. So if the Titans are good, they're under the radar, they can become a very sneaky playoff team and prove the doubters wrong. So I actually think the non-primetime thing helps the Titans from the standpoint that I do think it keeps them humble a little bit. It's like, yeah, I mean, like, even the one primetime game you have is not a standalone primetime game. So what do they think of you? I think there's something to that. But I think the bigger thing for me with the no primetime game is the routine is the same. Whatever Will Levis's routine is, and his routine will change. I don't know how many of you guys have been doing your job for 5, 6, 7 years. But at some point, the routine kind of changes. It becomes more efficient, and you really lock into the way you do things. At least that's how I am. You know, my routine is basically the same every day. Well, for Levis, he can have the same routine every week this year because it's going to be the same. So whatever he chooses to do on Mondays and Tuesdays, you know, they'll watch film if they lose on a Monday. Maybe Brian Callahan gives them off on Mondays if they win. But maybe Levis decides, okay, what I want to do on Monday is I want to get with the quarterbacks coach, and I want to watch every throw, and I want to do this. Then on Tuesday, I want to come in there, and I want to get with the quarterbacks coach, and I want to get with the OC, and I want to go over the game plan, and I want to know it so that I've got it down Tuesday, and we've gone over the call sheet and everything else, so I'm ready for practice on Wednesday as we go over the game plan. Well, that's going to be the same every week for Levis. It's going to be the same every week for Brian Callahan, except for the 1 week where they play on Monday Night Football, but they don't even have a short week after that because they have the bye. So that's where I think the benefit is, in the routine. One texter wonders if Joe Buck is anti-Titans. This is true. The Titans will have had 3 Monday night games in consecutive years, and Joe Buck will not have called one of them. Joe Buck has only called one Titan game. I think I'm going to say Joe Buck's called one Titan game this decade. And it was the Titans-Jags end of the season 2022 game. Because Joe Buck didn't call the Titans last year. Joe Buck called that one game at the end of the year, but the one Monday Night Football game the Titans had was against Buffalo. Did they have another Monday night game?
Did he call the 99-yard run?
But that was 2018.
That was 2018.
So I don't think Joe Buck called a 2020 Titans game. And 2021, I don't think Joe Buck called any of those games. Joe Buck just doesn't call the Titans. Fascinating. 615-737-1025. More your phone, 615-737-1025. Speaking of that Monday Night Football game, I did some digging. I believe the Titans maybe got the best team to play in primetime. And if you know me and you know how I feel about Tua, you will know why. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Tua Tagovailoa is definitely going to have a salary that starts with a 4. But this is the interesting conversation to have. And thanks, Nick. Appreciate you opening this can on the program. If you're the Dolphins, you're going to be sitting there saying, all right, Goff just got 50-something annual, salary.
Yeah.
And he almost made the Super Bowl. Tua just made his first playoff game appearance. Its second playoff season. He was injured for the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the other $50 million quarterbacks, there's a guy who's made the Super Bowl in Burrow, who's made the Super Bowl in Hurts, who's won 2 MVPs for Lamar Jackson, and then here's Tua's pushback. I was drafted in front of the guy who just got $52.5 million.
Yeah.
And he has the same number of playoff appearances and wins as I do.
I don't know about you, but that looked like money.
And so that's the push and pull
argument.
here.
Good argument
no
for
question.
Tua. Great
About
argument.
it. No doubt about it.
That was Rich Eisen saying, hey, Tua's going to get paid, folks. And Tua should get $50 million because, Justin Herbert got 50 and he was drafted in front of him. And it's not like Herbert's won anything. And so, yeah, go ahead and pay him. And you heard the Rich cronies in there that have to kind of carry the show because Rich can't do it by himself. And they're kind of like, yeah, Rich, way to go. Good Tua argument. Oh, God. Tua sucks. I'm sorry. So when the schedule came down and I saw that the Titans won primetime game, it's against the Dolphins, I thought, oh, that's great because Tua sucks in primetime. My biggest argument with everybody that's like, they had the number 1 offense in the league last year, Jared. Tua's efficiency rating, according to my thing is like, look, man, when I watch the Dolphins play, I don't know about you guys. When I watch the Dolphins play, I think Tua sucks. Every time I sit down and I watch him, I'm like, this guy blows. And by the way, when it comes to Tua, I don't think I have any anti-bias against Tua. Right, Ian? Like, I don't have an anti-Alabama bias, do I?
You love Nick Saban.
I like Saban fine. Like, if Chad Withrow, hated every Alabama player, it'd be like, okay, well, he doesn't, but again, he's a UT homer. I love him, but still, okay. I'm not anti-Alabama. Am I anti-Dolphin?
Who's anti-Dolphin? No one
cares. Am I?
No.
Yeah, the people in Miami don't care about the Dolphins.
No one cares
much
about
less
that
me.
much. Yeah.
Okay. Am I anti-Hawaiian? Because I gave Marcus every benefit of the doubt.
You did love Marcus. You did love Mariota.
So you can't say I'm anti-Hawaiian quarterback because I loved Mariota. And so I'm just telling you.
Is there a lefty thing in here?
No. And not only that, I think Tua, he seems, and I don't know him, but he seems like a great guy. It doesn't sound like he's Deshaun Watson. It's just, he sucks. And so I looked it up this morning. Over the last 2 seasons in prime time, the Dolphins are 2-8. So if it's a night game, Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, if the ball kicks off at 8:25 Eastern, the Dolphins are 2-8. That is awful. And one of those wins was on Sunday Night Football last year against the Patriots, and we know how bad the Patriots were last year. The other one that they won was against Kenny Pickett, and Tua, the greatest quarterback of all time, who we have to pay $50 million to, did not score a point in the second half. Like, I hope the Dolphins give Tua $55 million because he's so average that I'll laugh so hard when they have to get rid of a Jalen Waddle or something like that because they're paying Tua so much money. And then it's like, oh, wow, Tua actually does kind of stink. I mean, it's just when they play at noon, the Dolphins in 2023 at noon were 7-2. They lost to Baltimore. They lost to Buffalo. The year before that, at noon, the Dolphins were 8-4. So if they kick off at noon and they're not playing Baltimore or Buffalo, they win. Why? Because they're playing all these boring ass teams that stink. It's like, oh wow, congratulations, man. You beat the Colts, Tua, way to go, baby. But you play Buffalo, you lose. Why? Because Buffalo's good. That's why he stinks so bad in the primetime games. Because they're against the good teams. Here's who they played in primetime last year. New England, they beat them. And they beat the Jets on Black Friday last year, which, again, I think Tim Boyle quarterbacked that game for the Jets. Other than that, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City in the playoffs, Kansas City and Germany, loss, and they played the Titans in a game that the Titans gift-wrapped the Dolphins. Levis threw a pick six, and Eric Garrer at the end of the game fumbled a punt, even though Rabel said he was a good punt returner, and because Rabel doesn't know special teams if his life depended on it, Eric Garrer fumbles a punt that sets up a sure Dolphin touchdown to win the game, and they still lost because Tua sucks in prime time. And the reason they lost to you is because Tyreek got hurt, and all of a sudden Tua was out there without a blankie, and it was like, oh God, I have to throw the ball to somebody else. So yes, give me the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, because if there's any time for Tua to stink, it's in prime time. And I know when you take the stats and you look at the stats and you make an argument, you can argue whatever. You can argue like Rich Eisen that, well, maybe Tua does deserve $55 million a year. But when you watch the games, and I don't watch the Dolphins play the Atlanta Falcons during the regular season, but when he plays games that everybody watches, he loses because he can't beat the good teams because he ain't that good. And maybe he's, Kirk Cousins is the one that has the reputation of being just horse crap in primetime. Tua is worse than right now. Primetime game, Tua or Cousins, I'm taking Cousins. So good. And that was my rant today about Tua, which I'm sure will probably come back up the next time. Boy, when Tua gets paid, I'm going to laugh when Tua gets paid. It's like how I feel about certain quarterbacks. I love guys. Like, I love Burrow. Obviously, I love Mahomes, and Allen and those guys. It's like Lamar. I like Lamar. Obviously, went to the greatest school in the country. And you win a lot of games with Lamar. I don't know if Lamar can win the games against the high-end quarterbacks consistently when it really matters in the playoffs. But, you got to give Lamar his due. If I was running the Ravens, I'd give Lamar the contract that they gave him, which is a boatload of money. Then there's this second category of guys, like Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, where it's like, I don't hate Dak Prescott. I don't hate Trevor Lawrence, but I'm not really sure, I would be excited to have them as my quarterback. I'm not sure that I'd be excited to give them $55 million to play quarterback. But I know that I'd have to because the alternative of not Trevor Lawrence is not very good. Then there's Tua. If I owned the Dolphins and it was like, hey, Tua's representatives, it's time to talk contract. They're thinking that given the fact that Jalen Hurts was in the same draft and he's in the $50 million range, and Herbert was in the same draft and he's $52 million, and this one, Burrow's $50 million, and Tua's stats are blah, 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 we got to pay him $50. I'd say no. I'd say I'm not going $1 over $30 million. Not $1. This Price is Right. $1 over, And they'd say, the GM would look at me, Mr. Stillman, we can't give him $30 million. That would be, that's what Baker Mayfield's getting. And I'd say, exactly. And that's how hard I think it would be to replace Tua. I think it would be as hard as, okay, who's another average bridge quarterback who's out there? Sign him up. Tua's better than a backup. He's better than Taylor Heineke or Blaine Gabbert. But I don't look at Tua and say to myself, oh, my God, this guy, I don't think he's better than Baker. I don't think he's better than Jared Goff. I even said this after Levis led the comeback last year at Miami, and they kept showing Dan Marino on TV. And I kept thinking to myself, I go, if you were to ask Dan after the game, Dan, which quarterback would you rather have? It wouldn't shock me if Marino said Levis. I'd rather have Levis than Tua because I know there's a chance that Levis can be great. There's a chance Levis might be a bum, but there's a chance he can be great. There is no chance that Tua can be great. None. to your phones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 here on our program. I'm glad I got that one off my chest. Here, Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Tune into 1025 The Game today as Vandy Baseball takes on Kentucky. Pregame is at 5:15. So we're out early. First pitch at 5:30. Vandy Baseball brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. The Titans week 4 at Miami, Monday Night Football. It's a split doubleheader. We assume the other game will be on ABC and the Titans will be on ESPN. Is that the only primetime game you think they'll get, or do you think they'll get more primetime games?
No, I think that's probably it. But if you're going to get Miami, look, you never want to get Miami early in the season. But when I saw the split doubleheader thing on a Monday night, at least you got a chance. You know, the whole Heat thing, and I know some people think that's overblown, but I don't. You know, when you start thinking about how hot it gets in that stadium, if you're the Dolphins, a big part of what your early home field season advantage is is especially because they decided several years ago to unshade the visitors bench in that stadium. Guys just cook, right? So if you're going to get the Dolphins in Miami and you're going to get them early in the season, at least get them on Monday night. So there's a chance that, it's hot and humid. Titans fans know hot and humid. Like, you can handle that. Like, I'll take that all day over a scorcher in the middle of the day. I think the Dolphins are going to be really interesting this year because they were truly a house of cards last year, the way they won against bad football teams. So I don't know particularly what to expect yet from Miami. I like that draw for the Titans getting them on Monday night, but I still think the Dolphins have a chance to be good.
That was Fitz yesterday on the program. One texter into the text line says, I thought wins and losses were a quarterback stat, you hypocrite. Tua is fragile, but he wins. To which I replied, Ian, into the text line, and I said, at noon versus the Panthers, Tua wins. But on Sunday Night Football, Tua in prime time, which is when you're going to be playing him, the Dolphins over the last 2 years, 2-8. So here's who Tua beat last year. Ian, stop me when I mention a good team.
Okay.
Chargers, New England, Denver, the Giants, Carolina, New England, the Raiders, the Giants, Washington, the Jets, and Dallas.
Raiders were maybe the best team in there. Maybe.
Over Dallas?
Oh, I guess Dallas was last.
I would
time.
say Dallas was the only good team that he beat. Okay, here's who he lost to. Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Tennessee, Buffalo.
I get that, but the problem, the Titans fit more into the category of the team he would beat.
I know, but again,
that
was a primetime game.
Yeah.
He stinks
and he still lost, yeah.
And so that's, again, I would, look, if we're picking today, I'm picking the Dolphins. But, and I do, I was thinking about it. Fitz may be onto something about that not shading the bench thing.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it definitely, the heat during the day there, early in September, it's hot. There's no doubt. So.
One texter says, Jared, what Tua are you watching? Your quarterback stinks. I watched my quarterback play Tua. I watched my quarterback beat Tua. I watched Tua. I mean, the reason they lost that game was because Tua just was he was nothing. The Titans tried to give him the game. They threw a pick six and they fumbled a punt for a touchdown. I mean, they handed the game to the Dolphins, and Tua still couldn't win it. Come on now. And so to me, it's like when I think of Levis's season last year, and I am not sold on Levis by any stretch of the imagination. I remember I was like, he had the good game against the Falcons, and he had the comeback against the Dolphins. I'm like, he won 3 games. What was the other win? I was like, what was the other game Levis won? And I was like, oh, yeah, Carolina. Whatever. Come on now. Texter says Jalen Waddle was still there when the Titans beat him. He had 1,000-yard seasons before Tyreek Hill got there. Yeah, I mean, look, and Jalen Waddle's a good player. But Tyreek is – I truly believe that there are very few players in the NFL that if you took them off of that team and put them on another team, that player could win games for that team. I'm not going to say like a star quarterback, because a star quarterback can win every game like that, but that they could. Aaron Donald is that kind of player, where like if Aaron Donald is on your team, you will win because you have Aaron Donald. And there are very few players like that. At his peak, Derrick Henry was that kind of player. I think Tyreek is one of those players. Like, you will win because you have Tyreek. Like, send Tyreek to the Commanders and put him with Jaden Daniels, and I bet Jaden Daniels is chucking the ball 60 yards down the field for touchdowns for Tyreek. I think Tyreek is that good. Skyler says, I'm very curious how much better or different the Titans' defense will look this year. Denard Wilson has not been talked about a lot. If he brings the Ravens blitz and aggressive defense, it will be very interesting in this Dolphins-Bears game with the Dolphins and the Bears in the first 4 weeks of the season. I kind of expect the Titans to try to play that defense they played when they were good at the beginning of their tenure, like that Jeff Fisher, Greg Williams, Jim Schwartz defense. And I think they might have the horses to be able to pull it off. Andrew says the 2020 quarterback draft is the most overrated draft ever. Other than Burrow, I personally wouldn't want any of these quarterbacks for the Titans. So I don't blame Jalen Hurts for what happened last year at the end of the season, but I do wonder, and I wonder this about Brock Purdy too. Like, I wonder if there's kind of a cap for Hurts and Purdy the way there was a cap for Tannehill. It's like you can win this much with this guy, with this great team around him, but you get matched up against Mahomes, and that little bit of difference is the difference. Whereas Burrow can beat Mahomes and Brady can beat Mahomes because they're that good. But I do like Hurts. I mean, I do think Hurts is a good quarterback. Herbert, he's running out of excuses. I mean, I love Justin Herbert. I do. And I said when he signed that contract, and we all knew that Brandon Staley was a schmo as his head coach with the Chargers, I said, now it's on Herbert to win. You blow the Jacksonville game the way they blew it in the playoffs, and it's like, well, Brandon Staley blew the game because Herbert wasn't making $52 million. Once you get paid $52 million, it's your job to win. And they didn't win last year. And I thought Herbert was horrible in the overtime here at Nissan Stadium in the game that they lost. And so now that Harbaugh's in there, and I know he doesn't have any receivers, but now that Harbaugh's in there, I do kind of feel like with that contract, I do think Herbert is running out of excuses. And that is coming from a Herbert fan. But I would take Burrow. I would take Herbert. I would take Jordan Love, even though I still think the jury is still a little bit out on Jordan Love. And I would take Hurts. So, Texter, you're wrong. I think that's a great quarterback draft. I'm just not a Tua guy by any stretch of the imagination. One texter says, Tua has never beaten the Titans, has he? I don't think so. I think he played quarterback that rainy game that when the Titans were the number 1 seed and Brian Flores was still coaching the Dolphins and the Titans just beat the crap out of them. And then after the game, remember we talked about added motivation for Tannehill, and Joe Rexrode was like, I don't think there's any such thing as added motivation because, Tannehill's going to be playing hard no matter what. And so I don't think like that there's going to be any struggle. I mean, I don't, And then A.J. Brown said after the game, yeah, Tannehill told us in the huddle, was like, all right, let's pour it on. So it did mean something to him, even though Joe said it didn't. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. One texter says, as a season ticket holder, I am glad most games are Sunday at noon. I don't have to miss any games because of the primetime games at home. I love the fact that I don't know about you guys. I was talking to somebody today about how I feel about the Titans. And, I think you guys understand when I go crazy that it comes from a place of love. That the reason I get so mad is because I love the Titans. I care. Like, I am spent after a Titans game. Now, maybe some of that is because I sit on the west side of the stadium, the east side of the stadium, which means that the sun's hitting me, and sun takes a lot out of you. Some of it is maybe because I'm up at 7 o'clock with the pregame show at 9:30, and so it's 2 hours of high energy, and then it's the game, and maybe I'm just nuts. And so I'm just so wound up, so spent, so everything on a Sunday that I do enjoy the fact that after the Titans game, win or lose, it's like, okay, what's the big game? Okay, it's Kansas City, Cincinnati, and I can sit there and watch it. Whereas if the Titans have a 3:30 game, like against the Chargers, Kansas City, Cincinnati's going on at the same time, I don't get to watch that game. And Sunday Night Football, I'm just miserable the whole day waiting for it to be Sunday night. And then I'm cool with Monday Night Football. 615-737-1025. TD is here for the TD Power Hour. What does TD think of the schedule? We'll get his thoughts. And I did ask TD today. We'll do this later in the TD Power Hour. I said, all right, TD, how do you feel about doing the traditional schedule day win-loss, win-loss, win-loss? And TD says he's in, so we'll have that later in the hour as well. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. And by the way, the Sounds are on tonight against the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp on the road, 6:05. First pitch, Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, number one, good to see you. Number two, you are the man. We appreciate everything that you bring to this show. I mean, the listeners look forward to this all week, and everything that our show and station does, you are a huge part of, and we appreciate you for that. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Like the Georgia State coach said, tell them to bring me my money.
There you go. TD, your reaction to the schedule. How did you feel when you got the email yesterday with the schedule? And I don't know if your ESPN sources, get that schedule to you a little bit earlier than we all got it. I have no idea. But what did you think? I know you, because I know as a beat guy, it's like, all right, get the hotels booked, get the planes booked, get the everything. But what did you think when you saw the schedule yesterday?
Yeah, no, we got it a little bit early, but we have a no-leak policy, so it was like holding my water, man. You know what I'm saying? Not being able to share what I saw. But, yeah, I saw the schedule, and I'm like, wow, the bye week's early. Ooh, one primetime game. Oh, shoot, look at the back end of the schedule, 3 straight division games. So you look at it, and you just kind of think about how things are set up and wonder how this team will fare. And one of the things that I looked at was, you always look at the division play, right? And I'm like, oh, look at you got the AFC East. Oh, yeah, I forgot there's Buffalo. Thank God it's in October and not December. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
Those are the things you look at, because I will tell you, and you remember because you were there at Green Bay, man. Yeah, it was very cold. Very, very cold.
You didn't have to walk 2 miles back after the Green Bay game was over because you couldn't get a car out of the stadium. It was so awful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our day traveling home was as equally awful, which
Oh,
you
yeah.
were a part of. So, you know what I was thinking about with the one primetime thing, the one primetime game? I think it's, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it is kind of a look in the mirror moment, a step on the scale moment of, hey, they think so little of you that they're giving you one primetime game, and it's not only one it's split with another game at the same time. And I think that can be kind of motivating a little bit of, hey, man, you guys signed L'Jarius Sneed and Calvin Ridley and drafted Tavondre Sweat, and they still, Tony Pollard and Lloyd Cushenberry, and they still don't respect you. And then I also think it's good, for the young quarterback who's still kind of finding his routine on a weekly basis, the young coach who, while he's coached for a while, he's never been a head coach before. I think it's good for them to have the routine of noon on Sunday pretty much every week.
Yeah, I'd say this, and I got to spend last Friday night and half of Saturday with Levis over there at Lipscomb for his passing academy. He's very – I wouldn't have any concerns about any of the cerebral part of it or anything like that. That dude is very detailed and put together when it comes to that. I wouldn't have a concern there. I get what you're saying. But I think really that game to me is one of the most important ones on the schedule.
And you're talking about the Dolphin game?
The Dolphins game, that Monday Night Football game, because it's an opportunity for them to show the rest of the league truly what they're about. You're going into the bye week, and then also you look at that, when I say show the rest of the league truly what they're about, it's a chance for this young quarterback to say, hey, look, put those eyes on me because I could be a marquee player in the league. That's why I think it's so important. And it's an opportunity for him to let the rest of the league know this team, they're going to get on my shoulders and we're going to rock out. So I think that's a critical game for them.
The one thing, though, about that is he had that kind of moment last year with that comeback, but most of the country was watching Tommy DeVito, against the Packers. And,
Yeah.
Again, we're all realists here. The sexier game is going to be Seattle and Detroit. Like, that's, Joe Buck's going to be doing that game. That game's going to be on ABC. It's like somebody asked in the text line, what percentage of the country watches the Titans in those split doubleheaders that they've had the last couple of years? And I don't really have an answer, but I would guess, 35% maybe?
I would say there's a good amount. Oh, you talking about watching one versus the other? Because, they're
Yeah.
not running simultaneously. fully. You know what I mean?
Well,
Right.
doesn't like one game kick off like 30 minutes before the other one?
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is if the Titans game kicks off first, what percentage stays on that station, ESPN 1, and doesn't shift to ESPN 2 or whatever. On primetime games, outside of that Dolphins game, I would say probably the Packers game a couple years ago. I mean, it has been a tough performance for them, and they haven't really given the rest of the league reason to be like, oh, yeah, we got to put the Titans on primetime. And then you also look at Derrick Henry leaving, right, wrong, or indifferent. You know, he's the man. Like, that's the guy. That's the marquee player. Right now, they don't really have that one player where you say, oh, I got to tune into the Titans to see what this dude does. And that's why I think that Monday game is so important, because it could make people be like, dang, that Levis kid, wow. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. I was thinking about Jared Goff and the fact that, remember, people wrote Jared Goff after that first year with Jeff Fisher, and he didn't play over Case Keenum. And I think what really happened was a lot of people thought Jared Goff was dumb, you know, because of the hard knocks when he didn't know that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. And so a lot of people, kind of wrote him off, and then McVay took over, and he had that great second year and exploded. And Jordan Love, I think he had that bad game when he filled in for Aaron Rodgers, and people kind of wrote him off. And then last year, they were 6-8, and then Jordan Love got hot, and now people are like, whoa, he could. I think Levis could do the exact same thing. Exactly. People are kind of writing him off, but I could see Levis having a big year, throwing the ball down the field, and people saying like, wow, this Levis kid, he's got a rocket launcher for an arm right there, and they're throwing the ball. Yeah,
no, exactly. That's what it is. And so that's where the showcase thing is. But I tell you, you look at this schedule, and, I mean, the amount of really good receivers that they're going to face, right? Garrett Wilson, you look at Christian Watson, you look at the Dolphins crew with Waddle and now Odell Beckham Jr., what's left of him, right? And obviously Tyreek Hill. You got Keenan Allen, you got DJ Moore. And I love me some DJ Moore. That's one of my favorite players to watch. And then you got Rome Odunze and Justin Jefferson and Stephon Diggs. And, we could just keep going on and on. Jamar Chase. L'Jarius Sneed could really earn his money this year.
So I love the fact, TD, I want your opinion on this. 4 of the last 5 against the AFC South, because if they get this thing rolling, it won't be right at the beginning of the year. They'll start off 8-0. It'll be kind of a progression, I would assume. And that may give them a chance to make something of the division if they get it rolling. I think a lot of fans that were like, wow, it's too much division at the end of the year. I'm like, I want division at the end of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I want division at the end of the year. I'm a little, everybody has a little bit of selfishness in them. So my selfishness is going to come out right now. And I'm going to tell you why I want those games to matter and be of relevance is because I want to make sure ESPN continues to send me the games. You know what I mean? Towards the end of the year, like, they tend to try to make some business decisions. And I got to, put on my suit and tie with the briefcase and do some selling. You know what I mean? So hopefully the Titans do that for me by keeping things relevant. But to your point, though, right, and that's exactly why they have that last game always be a division game. Now, it just so happens that 4 of the last 5 are, but that last game is always a division game to deter teams from, hey, we got stuff wrapped up. Let's go ahead and bench the starters. It makes that game a little more relevant.
And I think, too, like for the Titans, I've seen years where they've started off poorly, but they've salvaged it by winning in the division. And Jacksonville did that 2 years ago, where they started off poorly and they salvaged it in the division. I love that at the end of the year. I also, how much do we remember the Murderers Row of 2021 when they went through Buffalo, Kansas City, Indy, and the Rams. And then they really had one in 2022 where they went to Green Bay, and then it was Cincinnati, and then it was Philadelphia. And I would argue that Murderers Row, and I know they won the Green Bay game, but then they lost everyone after that, that kind of broke them, in 2022. They don't have any stretch like that this year, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, no, and that is a great thing. And I mean, you look at it, starting off the bat, like that's no walk in the park, right? I mean, yeah, we'll see what the Bears are to begin, but the Jets, their pass defense is good. You got Aaron Rodgers, getting back into the mix. The Packers they're a good team, and the Dolphins are the Dolphins, so that's a tough little start. But to your point, there is no crazy hard stretch, and that's great for this coaching staff. But, I mean, things could change, right? This league has a matter of things changing quickly from year to year, and it could be very different, right? Like that whatever Commanders game could end up being they could end up being a tough out. You know what I mean? And I just
yes.
You never know.
I mean, I remember in 2017, I think this was the year before you got here, the schedule at the end of the year was like San Francisco, they sucked. The Rams, they sucked in 16. Jacksonville, they sucked, and somebody else. And at the end of the year, that McVay had gotten there, and Shanahan had gotten there, and Jacksonville that year they had added Calais Campbell, and they were really good. And all of a sudden at the end of the year, it's like, holy crap, these 4 games. I mean, this is a gauntlet. And so that absolutely could happen where it's like, oh, actually, Minnesota's good. Actually, what would have to happen for that? They'd put Sam Darnold in there, and then they'd get good. And, that's a I'm kidding.
I'm not taking that bait.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Not to do that.
Although Tua 2-8, I should say the Dolphins, because I don't know how many of those games Tua didn't play. 2-8 in prime time over the last 2 years, which I found to be fascinating. So TD, you have been big on Caleb Williams for a while. Well, we will get to see Caleb Williams in his first game with the Chicago Bears. I want your opinion on that, because I don't want to sit here and say let's preview the first game, but I'm getting excited about the first game with the schedule dropping yesterday. TD, your thoughts on that? We'll do that next here on Stillman and Company, the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Rookie quarterbacks, 6 of them taken in the first 12 picks this year, if you haven't heard. Caleb Williams gets things started at home against the Tennessee Titans. 1 p.m. Eastern game on Fox, week 1. Watch that, Chris, instead of Giants-Vikings, so I don't have to listen to you every time the Giants have a play that results in positive yardage. It will be Caleb Williams taking on the Titans with a new head coach, Will Levis, in year 2. Caleb Williams, the present and the future for the Chicago Bears. That should be a fun one. And that same day, Jaden Daniels. Late afternoon, Jaden Daniels taking on the Bucs in Tampa to start his career.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that won't be easy. We know the Bucs are good; they're talented, right? Playoff football team, and I look at Caleb Williams though, and look at that one and go, hey, 1 p.m. Tennessee, doesn't necessarily have the the aura of the toughest place to play, right? They're a new coach and kind of a new team themselves. That's certainly one I think is winnable.
That was Mike Florio and Chris Sims this morning. TD, I was offended when I saw Chicago's a 4.5-point favorite. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay is a 4-point favorite against Jaden Daniels in Washington. I was like, whoa. That being said, your thoughts on week 1, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears?
What did Bar Scott say? Can't wait. Listen, Caleb Williams is a guy that I've liked since 2021, right? And I remember I just happened to be watching that Texas-Oklahoma game, and they were down by, two touchdowns? I think it was like 17 points, something like that. And he came in for Spencer Rattler and led them to the 55 to 40-something win. And I'm like, yo, this dude is like, he's playing like his ribs are showing. He's hungry. You know what I mean? And liked him ever since. And you look at the stuff that he's able to do. I love quarterbacks that are able to go off schedule and make plays. But then he's one of those guys where you can't just be like, oh, well, he can't win that way. You have to stay in sequence. You have to stay in whatever. And he can stay in the pocket and in rhythm and have that timing to it too. So he's a pretty fun quarterback to watch. I want to see how he's going to be able to, get used to being with those targets that he has. Because, I mean, look, man, you got a nice trio of receivers. You got Kmet, the tight end. And then, I mean, you look at DeAndre Swift, you know what I mean? In the backfield, that situation is set up pretty well for him. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a fun game. It's one of those games where I think Denard Wilson could show off a bit. And you talk about can't wait. That's one of the things I look forward to the absolute most in this season is seeing how he and that defense looks.
I'm glad you brought that up because on one hand, I'm sitting here, I don't love playing a rookie quarterback in his first game because you have no film on him, but what do they know about Denard Wilson and what the Titans might do on defense?
Nothing. I mean, you could go back and maybe schedule some, preview some Greg Williams tape or, some of the things that the Ravens did in the secondary last year or things that the Eagles did when he was the DB coach overall, secondary coach there. But there really isn't much you can pull from it because they're not going to show much in the preseason. You know what I mean? So it's just going to be all about just making sure Caleb Williams is able to not panic, right? And when I say panic, I say that because he's going to see something before the ball's snapped, and it's going to be different once it is, right? And so they have to take him through those channels and help him be able to make that adjustment accordingly. And it's just going to be tough to do that, when you have a 300 and I guess at that time 350-pound guy collapse in the pocket from the interior, with a monster coming off wherever he's coming in Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat.
By the way, I didn't think Sweat was that fat last week. Like, when I got out there, because Warren Sapp's listed at 303, and I'm like, if Warren Sapp is 303 and he's 366, he must be the size of a house.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. Like, and that's why it's important to see for yourself as opposed to numbers, right? You see 366, and you're like, oh, man, it's going to be a Tubalard out there. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of this talk about, the way he's supposedly – oh, by the way, did you know that he played more snaps per game than Byron Murphy did?
Somebody said that. I don't know who, but somebody did. And they were like saying all that two-down player stuff or whatever, but then he played more than Byron Murphy.
It's true. He did. So, a lot of these narratives get formed and they get tossed out there. and we allow it to shape our view of a guy. But then, like in your case, you see him in person, you're like, you know what? He's not Fat Albert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's big, but he's not, like, again, but now, first of all, I think Warren Sapp 303, that's got to be bullcrap. There's no way he was 303.
Warren Sapp, though, you talk about sweet feet. You ask ask Zach Pillar or anybody that you might have access to, ask them about going against Warren Sapp. They'll tell you, right off the snap, like this dude was boom, boom, and real swift with it. I think when you look at Sweat, and the reason why I bring up the sweet feet, because Sweat played basketball, a lot like how T.R. Tart did, because even though it wasn't consistent burst and quickness and movement, when he wanted to get somewhere, Big Tart would. And it's funny because I remember during the year last year watching Sweat, and I'm like, yo, this dude is he's like a hyped up, a pumped up T.R. Tart. You know what I mean? The same quick swim move, good arm, hand usage and stuff like that. But the footwork is something that I think is going to continue to shine with Sweat. And now if he drops some weight and gets down to that 345, 350, you're really going to see it.
So I'm of the belief that with T'Vondre Sweat, like if everything goes well and he becomes the player he can become, like this is going to sound crazy, but I think he might be like a Hall of Fame caliber player. That if he can, I just don't know if that is like a Warren Sapp or if that like a Warren Sapp, Albert Haynesworth, Reggie White, or if that's like more of a Vince Wilfork who, I think Vince Wilfork should be in the Hall of Fame one day. I don't know if he'll make it or not. I thought he was an incredible player, but he was more of like a true nose. And, yeah, he'd get after the quarterback some, but he really just dominated the offensive line and let everybody else eat. And I'm trying to figure out which kind of player Sweat would end up like if everything goes right.
Well, Sapp played a lot in that 4-eye. Like, he wasn't as much head up. They have Booger McFarland doing a lot of that head up on the center. But, to your point, I think you look at Sweat, he's not somebody that you have to be restricted to the A and B gap. Like, you can move him around. And that's the thing that I think is impressive with him. Now, here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. And I kind of started to think that after I talked to him at the Senior Bowl and he told me that he doesn't use the bull rush because it's too easy. It's boring. He doesn't use it all the time. He wants to show himself to be a complete pass rusher. And it's kind of like when Donovan McNabb with the Eagles a long time ago, like he got so caught up in showing like or even Dak Prescott more recently, I don't have to run the football to be effective. I can stay in the pocket and just play your game. And that's what I think it is with Sweat. Just play your game. Use your bull rush. It's powerful. Use your bull rush consistently until they stop it and have the counters off of it. You don't always have to, try to be real pretty and finesse with it. You're a power player. Use that.
Let me tell you where I expect to see T'Vondre Sweat's bull rush. And if not, I'm going to be
against the Dolphins.
Yes. I'm going to be very disappointed at him, Denard Wilson. I'm going to be disappointed at the owner. If they play week 4 the Dolphins with Aaron Brewer at center and they don't stick T'Vondre Sweat right over Aaron Brewer and say every play you push him back as far as you can.
Yeah, no, I get it. I knew as soon as I said, yeah, he going right to the Dolphins.
Somebody brought that up on Twitter last night about Brewer versus Sweat, and I was like, oh, my God. Sweat, he might, again, Brewer said he played at like 290, right?
Something like, 290, yep.
Okay, Taylor Lewan did an interview where he talked about how much he loves Brewer, and he said he's 272 soaking wet. So my guess is it's probably more like 275, 280 than it was 290. Mm-hmm. T'Vondre Sweat is literally 80 pounds bigger than him. Like this is what Jonathan Hankins, and I expect Sweat in the long term to be a better player than Jonathan Hankins. Jonathan Hankins is a very good player. And when they played the Raiders 2 years ago, they sat Hankins right over Brewer the entire game, and he just pushed him back. And then Hankins got traded to the Cowboys, and they played the Cowboys later that year, and he just sat right over Brewer. I'm like, T'Vondre Sweat should eat Aaron Brewer for lunch, literally, and I cannot wait to see it. That might be the most excited I get all season.
You know who T. Sweat reminds me of, and no one has really gone into this, but if you remember Dontari Poe,
Yes, with the Chiefs.
Yeah, like an athletic. Like I'm not going to go as far as to say Vita Vea because he's a different player. But I think you look at Dontari Poe, it's very similar as far as now. Poe I think was like 350. So you're talking in the same neighborhood weight wise, but just the agility and the speed at that weight. These guys carry that well enough for you to be like, yeah, they're 350, 360, but they're not fat boys.
I'm trying to think with Dontari Poe. He played with Justin Houston, and kind of that group before this current group of Chris Jones and D Ford and those guys. Right?
Correct. As Chris Jones was coming in, they got him up out of there.
And then Chris Jones, like I kind of think.
You ever see Chris Jones in person?
Now that you say it, I don't think I have.
Lord have mercy. Let me
like
tell
Simmons?
you something. I was in the tunnel. Before the AFC Championship game, and he came out and he was standing next to me, and he was kind of like leaning against the wall praying, and I said, God dang!
And you were praying that the wall stood up.
I was just praying that he didn't get too hyped and want to bounce around because I'd have had to, kind of, excuse me, get out the way. You know what I mean?
So how would you say he compares to Simmons? Because I'll never forget the first time Simmons walked by. We're at practice. I forget where we were. And Simmons was hurt. This was training camp. And Simmons was coming off the knee injury. And he walked by me and Floyd turned to me and just goes, oh. Yeah. Like as Simmons walked by, look at, almost like the hottest girl in the world had walked by. It was that kind of thing when Simmons walked by. And so how would you say Jones size-wise is to Simmons? Simmons is a big man.
It's like a Doberman and a Bulldog. That's how I put it, right? Whereas, Jeff is just – you look at him and it's just like he's a Bulldog. That's what he is. You know what I mean? Whereas Chris Jones is a little bit longer. He's a little bit longer. I don't know what the height and weights measure out as. I'm just talking about visually he's a little longer. But Jeff, man, God. There's so much power. Simmons got so much power packed in him, man. So much power. Look at, and I keep referring back to it, man. Look at that Colts game. Man, listen, he was folding up. You know how you go to a church banquet, and when everything's done, they fold up the chairs and they're stacking them up? He was folding Quentin Nelson like a banquet chair.
I feel like when you say power, I think that his truck represents him as a football player.
That truck is sweet.
I mean, there is. All right, so I asked TD this morning. I said, TD, can you do the traditional schedule day, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss? And TD said he was in. So, TD, coming up next, the TD win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. We will do that next. Stillman and Company. I forgot. I need to tell you about Window Nation. That's right. I love Window Nation. They are the best. It's their semi-annual sale, and it is a big deal. I mean big. Right now, get 50% off all windows along with no interest for 5 years, plus bonus savings when you schedule a consult today. I had Window Nation out to my home, and I said, hey, take a look at the windows. They said, your windows are fine. You don't need a replacement. I said, really? That made me learn that this was an honest company. If your windows are hot or old or leaky or cracked or foggy and you know it, call Window Nation today because it's about to get sweltering outside, and you guys know that. Do not crank that AC up when you can get a good window that takes care of it. And with Window Nation's semi-annual sale, you can do it. Again, 50% off all windows and no interest for 5 years, plus bonus savings when you schedule that no-obligation in-home estimate today. It's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Join Cromwell Media along with local athletes and musicians at Hermitage Golf Course on June 20th for the 615 Open. Make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to player sponsor at 615open.com. TD Power Hour, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. All right, TD, I heard Robbie and Rexroad do this morning. They went over the Titans schedule game by game. I think Joe I don't want to misquote anybody, but I think I was kind of half asleep or maybe even 3/4 asleep listening to this. I think Joe was 6-11 and Robbie was 7-10. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay, week 1, Titans at the Bears. Who you got?
I'm going with Titans. I think that Denard Wilson defense is going to come out with a bang and have plenty of turnovers and have Caleb Williams scrambling.
Week 2, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. It looks like Aaron will be back. They play Monday Night Football that week against the 49ers. Titans hosting the Jets week 2.
I think it's funny. You go from a deer in the headlights rookie to a savvy veteran, and I think the Jets beat the Titans.
I'd much rather have the Jets later in the year, knowing how combustible that situation might be with that coach and owner and offensive coordinator and
Very
quarterback.
True.
And
Very true.
Week 3, the Packers, Jordan Love. People forget this. They were 6-8 last year at Christmas. They did not lose again until the 49er game where they just couldn't kick a field goal. So I got to tell you, it looks like Jordan Love might be the real deal. Packers, Titans, week 3.
This is a tough one, man. I wrote W. I wrote L. I'm going to go back to W. I don't see him going 0-2 at home to start off.
Okay. The Dolphins are 2-8 in primetime over the last 2 years. You know how I feel about that quarterback. Monday Night Football at Miami.
This one's hard. But I love the way L'Jarius Sneed plays. I'm going W.
Okay. He actually did play Tyreek Hill incredibly well last year. So TD's got him at 3-1 entering the bye week, which takes us to the first division game against Indianapolis.
W.
Really?
I think they beat the Colts. I'm not a full believer in the Colts yet. I mean, I'm not a full believer. Anthony Richardson is a plutonium-level potential guy. But I think, again, I believe in this defense that the Titans have. Now, I'm not going to have them 10 wins. Don't get it twisted. But I think they win this game.
So my thing with the Colts is I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, Levis sucks, and they're saying Richardson's good. And I just don't know enough to tell you that Richardson's good because he didn't play last year.
Exactly.
And you know how much I loved Richardson coming out.
I remember.
Titans and Bills.
L.
Titans at Detroit.
L.
Yeah, that's just what it is. Patriots.
W.
I think it is great when we're looking at the schedule that the Titans have the Patriots coming after those 2 games.
Yeah, it's like, all right, let me this is a get-back fight. I done fought Mike Tyson 1 week, then I got to fight Vander Holyfield. Come on over here, Michael Moore. Let me beat you up a little bit.
Titans at Chargers November 10th. It should be noted, I do not believe the Titans have ever beaten the Chargers in either San Diego or that football stadium or that soccer stadium or SoFi where Ryan Tannehill got hurt 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Justin Herbert had that nice throw at the end. This is a tough one. I'm going to go W. I think they win.
Okay. It's going to be hard for me to take the Titans when the other team's got Joe Alt, but that,
Mm-hmm. Or the next team because they may have Sam Darnold.
Oh, if Sam Darnold's playing quarterback, I may have to change my tune here. Minnesota and what I assume will be J.J. McCarthy by November 17th. Minnesota and J.J. against the Titans at home.
I think that's a W.
On the road at C.J. Stroud and the Texans.
L.
Division games are always kind of weird, but I'm with you on that. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. And Jaden Daniels, that Commanders receiving core is sneaky good.
I'm going to go W at Washington.
Jacksonville at home.
Loss.
Bengals at home.
Loss.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Colts on the road.
That one I think is – I'm going to go W there.
Okay. Jacksonville on the road.
Loss.
Houston.
Loss.
At the end. So that
that's
would be
what?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
7, 9. 9 and 8.
That is 9 and 8. Okay. So Joe, I think, had him at 6 and 11. Robbie at 7 and 10. Chase had him at 9 and 8, just like UTD. Big Joe had him at 10 and 7.
Ooh. I mean, I could see that if you say, hey, you know what? The Jaguars don't sweep them and the Texans don't sweep them. But then you're going to have that win. Like that Green Bay game, I could very easily make that an L. You know, so it's.
Sure. And I could see them winning the Jets game.
Yeah. And then the Chargers game could be an L. Like it's and that's the thing, until we see this team, like we know the previous Titans teams were like, okay, they're playing the daggone Commanders who are really bad. They're going to lose that game. But then they'll turn around and go to Philly and beat the Eagles. And it's like, what the heck?
Well, I mean, that was like the Mike Vrabel way, was there would always be some fakakta loss against the terrible Texan team with Davis Mills at quarterback, and then they'd turn around and they'd go beat the Rams in SoFi, you know, without Derrick Henry. And it's like, okay, I don't understand what's going on here. And that very easily could happen this year. I mean, I think the game that encapsulated the Vrabel era the best was the Malik Willis Sunday night game at Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because, like, people right now, you know, they everybody loves a new coach, which means they hate the old coach. But, like, Vrabel was a good coach. And it's like the Titans with Vrabel, they got so close against, you know, such odds, and they just never got over the hump in the end, whether it was 21 or 20 or 19. And in that Kansas City game, nobody was expecting them with Malik Willis at quarterback to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes. They got there, but they just couldn't get over that hump.
Just couldn't get over the hump. You're absolutely right. And it's just like, man, Chris Conley, shame on you.
Oh. Okay, to your phones for TD. TD at 9 and 8 on schedule day. Much will change because the Titans are probably out of safety and there'll be other things as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We are right to you with your questions for TD. Schedule, mini camp, roster, whatever. Put it in there for TD. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, do you have a thought or do you want to go to the phones?
I have a quick thought. I want to shout out my daughter, Drew. She is graduating from Nashville School of the Arts on Monday. So shout out, Drew. Way to go.
As my people would say, Mazel Tov, TD.
There he is. Mazel tov.
Craig, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Craig, you're on with TD. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
What's up, man?
I love the show. Congratulations to your daughter, TD.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So here's my question for both of y'all. Like, I've been listening to Jared talk about the strength of the schedule, not the strength of the schedule, but prime times that we get. Like, the more you get, the more popular you are. But wouldn't you think that the less primetime games would be less pressure on the team?
No.
Thank you. I'll hang up and listen.
That's a good point, right? Because
it's a good radio topic, honestly, to debate.
Yeah, the less primetime games, the less pressure. But I think, as an athlete, especially an elite one, you want eyes on you. Like, you want that opportunity to show the world what it is that you bring to the table. So, yeah, I mean, there's good and bad with it. I personally would rather be in as many primetime games as possible. And I'll be honest, just covering the sport, I would rather them have more primetime games because I love when it's, okay, TD, we need your story. We're going to run it. It's going to have the opportunity to lead the site because this is the one game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure if on a much less significant level, if I'm looking at it that way, I'm sure these guys are.
I remember in Kansas City at the AFC title game talking to like all the, you guys, all the media, and it was like, even though the media is impartial for the most part, like doesn't root for teams, it's like, yo, it's good for TD if the Titans win this game.
Darn right. And that's like I told Levis, you know what I mean? I'm like, bro, you're good for business, man. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Sure. I personally am glad that there's not a lot of prime time just because I like the Sunday noon kicks and then I get all my anger out and then I can watch whatever the big game is that day at 3:30 in Sunday Night Football. But, more pressure, less pressure. I think for some guys, crumble when it's the big moment. And then I think other guys are Derrick Henry when it's the big moment.
Yeah, I think get fresher under pressure. That's the only way to do it.
Tua and the Dolphins are 2-8 in primetime in their the last two seasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, last year's team was a good team. The year before, it's not just Tua. It's not just Tua.
Indy Ben's mad at you, TD.
Uh-oh.
Indy Ben says, TD, what makes you a full believer in the Titans then? The Colts nearly won the division with a backup quarterback last year.
I'm sorry, Indy Ben. I never said I was a full believer in the Titans.
Well, that's what he heard when you picked him over the Colts.
Okay. I'm sorry, Indy Ben. I never said I was a full believer in the Colts either. I tell you what I like about the Titans, and I'm just looking, and Indy Ben, I went 1-1. Or actually, no, I have them sweeping the Colts. Mm-hmm. I have them sweeping the Colts. Well, I believe in that defense. That's what makes me a full believer. I believe in a defense that has two very high-level corners and one healthy, solid safety, and what I think is going to be an outstanding rookie inside linebacker and an outstanding rookie interior pass rusher and one of the best interior defensive linemen in Jeffrey Simmons. I think that defense is going to be good because I believe in the players that I just mentioned, and I believe in that coaching staff. And I think that they'll be able to win.
I think that you missed one of the most important parts of the defense, and that's that Landry is going to be a year removed from the knee injury.
Yeah. I mean, look, I didn't want to just go into, like, every single position.
Sure.
Like, those are the things initially. But obviously, yeah, Landry too. That's a good point.
Caleb says, when you're talking wins and losses, are you thinking about what Levis was last year or what Levis will be this year?
Both. I'm thinking of, what I saw last year to make me feel what he can be this year. I think it's a combination of the two. And that's the other thing. Like, listen, like, people like Indy Ben, bro, don't go kick your dog or punch a hole in the wall because I picked your team to go 0-2 again. We're just going off and just click. It's May. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Chill.
I would say the one thing that I when it comes to the Colts, I don't know what to expect out of Anthony Richardson because he did not play last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Colts had a solid team. They weren't great. They weren't awful. They were solid. But that was with, I think, kind of a replacement level average bridge quarterback in Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Richardson might be 100 times better than him. He might never reach the potential because of the injuries. I don't know. Trevor Lawrence went up to Anthony Richardson after the first game last year and said, dude, you cannot play the way you played in college because you can't take these hits.
Mm-hmm.
And he got hurt twice. Does Anthony Richardson say, okay, I got to change my game now because of what happened last year? Does Anthony Richardson say, all right, let's run these same QB sweeps and I'm going to go run into Harold Landry again and see what happens?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's tough. It's tough. We don't know. But look, I mean, you put A.D. Mitchell in that mix, like, make no mistake about it. A.D. Mitchell, you look at Pittman, you look at Alec Pierce. I've always liked Alec Pierce since Cincinnati, watching the Desmond Ritter film. And then
Jelani Woods.
You look at Jelani Woods, you look at Josh Downs, you look at Mo Alley Cox, like Grayson, the tight, like Grayson, the tight, like they have some players. Don't get it twisted. And obviously Jonathan Taylor. And here's the thing: if you ask me next week to go through these games, I very well may pick, them losing one and winning one, and them, sweeping another. Like it's just back and forth. Like not to say I'm a total believer in the Titans or a total doubter in the Colts. It's just
I think it's like your way of saying it's not that serious. It'll
basically
be okay.
It's not that deep.
Texture says, TD, tell me where A.J. Highsmith fits on the organizational chart of the Titans front office. Does he replace the college scouting director? Is he above the college scouting director? What about the pro scouting side? Does he report to Anthony Robinson? Thanks. Who's A.J. Highsmith?
A.J. Highsmith, that's Alonzo Highsmith's son. He's a new guy they hired to oversee, I think it's the college part of it. I believe he's going to report ultimately to Rand, but I'm not sure exactly who he's going to – because I don't know. Who is the pro personnel? I don't know who's – long story short, I don't know.
Is John Salgi still there?
I'm not sure if he's still there. I'm not sure. I know that there was a move, like Brandon Taylor moved from the pro side to the college side, and he's high-ranking in the college side. But I don't know the relay, the chain of command from A.J. Highsmith up to Rand Carthon. I'm not exactly sure.
Are they, it sounds like, because Paul was talking about how they had interviewed some people, that are higher ups in other organizations. It sounds like after the draft, they've decided they are going to reshuffle the scouting side a little bit.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, look, and that's to be understood because, so here's the deal, right? Like you have the contracts pretty much expire after the draft, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Rand, being the type of leader that he is, he wasn't going to come in and just say, okay, you, and you, see you. He came in and he gave people an opportunity to prove themselves to him, right? And so that way he could decide, I'm going to keep this person. I'm going to take this person. I think you would be better in this role, this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? And so that's why you're seeing it. So, yeah, definitely it's intentional, and you're going to continue to see some of these changes and moves, and it's just you got to wait for other guys, their contracts to come out of expired and be able to make that move.
Steven asked, TD, will Caleb Farley be healthy enough to compete for a spot on the team this year?
I don't think even Caleb Farley himself knows that, to be honest with you. No one knows. And the way that thing works is kind of like a day-to-day thing where it's going to – and this is what he told me, back in January. He said, one day it feels straight and he feels like he has the explosiveness. The next day he doesn't. So it is a day that we're talking about a nerve issue, right? It's something that's going to be touch and go. So I don't know. He doesn't know. Maybe Jesus does.
One texter says, TD, how much do you think the coaching staff is using the OTAs in order to evaluate Elijah Molden before thinking about going to add another safety?
I don't really know how much evaluation you could get done now, right? I don't think they're really using them much, to be honest with you. I think, they will eventually go ahead and bring in a veteran, whether it's Marcus May. Because with Molden, it's not about the ability. It's about the availability.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's a solid safety. He's not Jordan Poyer in the prime or, any of those guys, but he's a solid safety.
He's fine as the fifth defensive back with this group.
Yeah, and I think, it's going to be interesting seeing how they mix things up because, you got Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Roger McCreary, who both, like, they tackle like safeties, like linebacker. You know what I mean? So they're enough to be helpful against the run. So you could go with, a bunch of corners. Or you could have those times where you do the big safety looks and, you bring in, or the big nickel looks, where you have a third safety, whoever that may be. If it's Marcus May and Elijah Molden with Hook, you know what I'm saying, with Hooker.
Do you think that it's more May because of the experience with Wilson than Simmons, or that maybe at this point May's a better player than Simmons?
Ooh, Justin Simmons is one of my guys. He's been a TD guy since watching him at BC and with him at the East-West Shrine. I don't think Marcus May at this point is better than him, just like talent for talent, but I think he could hit the ground running better because of the time that he spent with Denard Wilson and knowing, Denard Wilson could be like, this scheme right here, this technique, this concept is just like what we did back in 2019, and we called it this, right? So I think that ability will help initially, but Justin Simmons is enough of a pro where he'll be ready to rock regardless. So I think it comes down to what they're more comfortable with. I think that's the thing.
TD, tell us about ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
Absolutely, man. Every shot, every goal, ESPN Bet has fans covered for the biggest moments on the road to the championship. It is the exclusive sportsbook of ESPN and the only place to find special offers and promotions from your favorite ESPN shows and personalities throughout the playoffs. New users get a bet reset up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. For problem gambling and support, call or text TN Redline 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
He's
sound
the
like
best.
a car commercial?
It was perfect. It was perfect. Well done, TD.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you as always. We'll talk next week.
All right.
Yep, Teron Davenport, the TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Will Levis, I'm not going to say disrespected because I don't know if Will Levis has earned the respect. But I do think too many people across the country have made up their minds on Will Levis. But that's okay. And I'll tell you why. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Titans' schedule is out, and boy, is the public out on Will Levis. Goodness gracious. The Titans have one quote-unquote primetime game, and it's not even a standalone game. It's a split doubleheader with another game going on at the same time as the Titans game. Again, when they played the Dolphins on Monday Night Football last year, as great as that comeback was, most of America was watching Tommy DeVito of the Giants beat the Green Bay Packers. But let me say this, speaking from experience. You know, at one point in time, when we started the Jared and the GM program, they said, oh, that's not going to work. You know, he's too loud and obnoxious, and it's too hot takey, and it's all whatever. Then it worked. Then the GM left. Oh, it's not going to work. It's not. And now we have, in Afternoon Drive, the number one sports show in the city. So I know what it's like to just have everybody, oh, it's not going to work. And then it worked. And so while Will Levis has been completely disrespected, disrespected's I don't know if Will Levis has earned the respect. But again, most people outside of Nashville think, oh yeah, he puts mayo in his coffee, he sucks. The jury should be out on Levis. Just like the jury should be out on Anthony Richardson, who barely played last year, and Bryce Young, that had no football team around him. Even C.J. Stroud, who had a great rookie season last year. Great. I'd still say, let's see, year two, let's see. But then it just kind of feels like it's like, nah, dog, Levis sucks. And I think that is crazy. I get not putting him on national TV. You know, I wouldn't put, if I'm sitting there doing games and it's like, okay, I've got C.J. Stroud, and I've got Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow and all these guys. Yeah, I put them on TV before I put Will Levis. I get that. But the amount of just like, oh yeah, the Titans, Will Levis, he sucks. The win totals, the over-unders. They're a 4.5-point dog to open the season at Chicago. Meanwhile, Washington is a 4-point dog against Tampa Bay, who was in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. I don't get it. But this is not the first time that the country has completely written off a quarterback unfairly or prematurely. In fact, I've done writing off of quarterbacks saying, oh, yeah, no. In 2017, after a disastrous 2016 Rams season in which Jared Goff played, a little bit midway through the year and Jeff Fisher got fired and all that kind of stuff, Sean McVay showed up and immediately flipped a switch, and Jared Goff was 11-4, and they went to the Pro Bowl, and, they had a contending type team, an electric offense. And everybody thought, because of Hard Knocks, when Jared Goff said, oh, I didn't know that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. At that point in time, everybody thought he was a dummy and thought he couldn't play. There was question. I remember Eric Dickerson after Jeff Fisher got fired and he was taking a victory lap for having gotten Jeff Fisher fired. And Eric Dickerson was asked if Jared Goff was a bust, and he's like, well, it's too early to say that. But that's the talk they were having after 1 year. In fact, if you look at Jared Goff's career, in fact, my feelings about Jared Goff have always been the opposite of the public, because when Goff was lighting it up with McVay and the Rams, there was talk about Goff like he was the number one quarterback in the game. And I'm like, no. I'm like, he is basically he does what he's told by McVay. There was all this talk that he'd get to the line of scrimmage early so that McVay could talk to him in the headset as he'd look at the defense. Then Goff got kicked to the curb by McVay, basically, after they had gone to the Super Bowl and everything else, and he had been benched for John Wolford and then won a playoff game and whatnot. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, he sucks. And I was like, he doesn't suck. Jared Goff's fine. I remember saying Jared Goff was better than Ryan Tannehill, and Robbie Stanley would text me every day, Jared Goff in all caps. Just like that was the stupidest take he ever heard. Which, by the way, Ian, I did text Robbie. You know, normally my issues are with Joe on that program. I did text Robbie, and I said, what about Jared Goff now with his $50 million contract?
Yeah, I heard them talking a little bit about it with Charles Robinson today, too.
Yeah, I think that's when I texted Robbie, and I was like, what do you think now? But again, everybody had made up their mind on Jared Goff, and then they didn't. And they thought he was good. And then they made it up again that he sucked. And it just happens to be that if you put good players around Jared Goff be fine. Last year, a lot of people, including me, I was skeptical about Jordan Love. I think most people were skeptical about Jordan Love, given the fact that he didn't play as a rookie. He played that one game in 2021 when Aaron Rodgers lied about being vaccinated, and he was awful. I mean, I didn't see that game as much as everybody else did, of just because I was we were doing the pregame show because the Titans were on Sunday Night Football, but I was keeping my eye on it when we were doing it, and he was Malik Willis bad. Like, it was like he didn't know how to play football. So then Aaron leaves after kind of the force out, and I think even the Packers, and you look at the contract they gave Jordan Love last year, it was kind of a bridge deal. It was kind of like we'll see. Let's see what Jordan Love's about. Did you know that at Christmas time last year, the Packers were 6-8? I certainly wasn't sitting there thinking Jordan Love is a franchise quarterback. And thank God for Jordan Love. Ian, do you know who they played the next week? They were 6-8, and they had lost to Tommy DeVito and the Giants. Do you know who they played the next week?
I cannot think of it now.
They played Carolina. And thank God they played Carolina, because they won that game 33-30. The worst team in the NFL. They won 33-30, and they ended up making the playoffs, and they didn't lose again until the divisional round. That was a 9-8 team. And now all the talk is Jordan Love, $40 million a year, $50 million a year. I personally, I'm like, let's see Jordan Love do it again. Like, let's see Jordan Love do it for a whole season. And then we can say whether or not Jordan Love is this or Jordan Love is that. So for me, I look at the Levis situation, and I don't want to say he's being disrespected. Because, again, to me, Levis hasn't earned that respect yet. But neither has Anthony Richardson. Neither has Bryce Young. Neither has Caleb Williams or any of the other rookie quarterbacks that were taken. And so when I look at them like, hey, don't worry what everybody else says. I've said many times, I'm right down the middle on Levis. I can see Levis being a star. I can see it not working out. I can see Levis being too high-strung, being too anxious with the ball in his hands, that the game never slows down for him and he never becomes more than a backup. I can see it. Jake Locker, I can see it. I can also see Will Levis with that bazooka of an arm, with his desire to be a great player, with the new, again, we talk about it all the time, the guru coach. I can see him developing into a Justin Herbert, developing into, a superstar quarterback with a rocket launcher for an arm. But the jury should be out on Levis. It shouldn't already be made up. I'm fine with the fact that they're not putting Will Levis on TV. That doesn't bother me. But the idea that he already sucks, that's not fair. Because he certainly showed more than that last season. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, one thing we keep leaving out when it comes to Levis that none of us have any true idea about We can be optimistic about it, but we don't know. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Hey, be sure to purchase your tickets now for the Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at MusicCityGP.com. As the racing station, 1025 The Game has a special offer for a limited time. Use promo code GAME for a 20% discount now through June 16th. Does Will Levis have any national television appeal?
No, not yet. And look, I just think, Like, this is where I come back to the conversation a lot that I had with Max Crosby when we got tattoos a few years ago at the draft and did an interview, and he kept talking about how you never forget the number. Nobody ever forgets the number next to your name for where you were drafted. And the funny thing is, to me, now you've combined to the fact that it's a second-round quarterback with a team that, frankly, nationally doesn't get a lot of attention. The only way that Will Levis is going to start to cut through to get national attention is if he comes out and he plays epic football. It's going to take being great. Like, right now, as I've said to you before, but I think it's even bigger right now, it's not that anybody's anti-Titans. It's just that the national media particularly is mostly Titan indifferent. When you look at the click rate on articles and videos about the team nationally compared to other things, doesn't resonate as much. When you look at the ratings, there isn't anybody flocking to turn around and say, oh, my God, we got to talk about the Titans, right? And so how do you change that? Well, you change that by having a quarterback that everybody falls in love with. You change that by being an incredible football team.
That was Fitz. And it's like, is there any national TV value in Will Levis? No. And then the schedule comes out, and the answer is no. But, Ian just brought this up, actually, that I think is a very fair point. TD said that they just don't have the star players. Derrick Henry was a star player. You don't have a Derrick Henry on this team. Tony Pollard, he's the man. If he can't do it, I forget what the line of the old grandma is. That video is hilarious, by the way. But, Tony Pollard's not Derrick Henry, folks, as far as drawing eyeballs to the TV. You really don't have any star players. L'Jarius Sneed does not draw eyeballs to the TV. He's a good player. And if his knees stay healthy, he'll be a great Titan. But he doesn't people aren't watching the game for L'Jarius Sneed. So they really don't have any of that. And then the other thing is, Mike Vrabel was a star coach. Most of the people around the country don't know who Brian Callahan is. And that is the thing that maybe gives me a little bit of hope that this is all going to work out. You can be optimistic about it, but you can't be certain because we've never seen Brian Callahan coach a game. But it does feel to me like we saw Sean McVay with Jared Goff, like we've seen Zach Taylor do with the Bengals, like we saw Jordan Love under Matt LaFleur, like we saw Kyle Shanahan do in San Francisco, like Mike McDaniel did on those noon kickoffs with Tua. The guru coach, the offensive guy from the McVay-Shanahan tree that runs the system, that is what makes these quarterbacks better. I will never forget when Adam Gase was fired with the Dolphins. And we didn't know that Adam Gase was as much of a bozo as we later learned when he was with the Jets and then when Ryan Tannehill was away from Adam Gase. But when Adam Gase was hired by the Jets, I remember reading headlines that said, well, Adam Gase is here to fix Sam Darnold. What they didn't know was Adam Gase was the problem. Well, I don't think Brian Callahan's going to be the problem here, but we just don't know if he's going to have the guru effect, and we don't know at what level of an effect he'll have as the guru. But when we talk about, Levis earning respect, and can the Titans take the next step, and they went out and got players for Levis, and again, this year's about Levis, we do kind of leave out the guru coach sometimes. And it's like, if the guru coach gurus, then maybe there is a chance that, like everybody wrote off Jared Goff, like everybody wrote off Jordan Love, that he goes out there and plays well. I mean, the Colts last year, Shane Steichen calling the plays for Gardner Minshew. They were on the doorstep of the playoffs. Meanwhile, Philadelphia went in the crapper because they didn't have the guru anymore. 615-737-1025. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Jared from Spring Hill says, I guess he's talking about me, you're the chancellor of the boo-hoo Will Levis crew. I dispute that. I am rooting for Levis. I could see it with Levis. I also think, I think it's 50-50. I'm the Tim Russert of Will Levis. Back in the day when Tim Russert used to host Meet the Press, you didn't know if Tim Russert was a Republican or a Democrat. So if you didn't like Tim Russert because you thought Tim Russert was too liberal, well, that tells me you're conservative. And if you didn't like Tim Russert because Tim Russert was too conservative, well, then it tells me you're a Democrat. Simple. I am the Tim Russert of Will Levis because I can see Dan Marino and Justin Herbert. I can also see Jake Locker. And I can see a guy that's backing up a freshman in college right now that one day is going to be taken 6th overall. I can see it. And I don't know which way this is going to go. You got Titan fans out here that are like, I mean, Amy Adams Strunk sat down with Mike Keith when she fired Mike Rabel, and she was like, well, we've got a great young quarterback. I'm like, whoa now. So don't tell me I'm the chancellor of the Boohoo Levis crew, that I'm the one that's all in on Levis. Don't tell me that. I think I have very much stuck to my claim with Levis of saying, hey, I could see it, but I'm not there. I don't buy in. People talk about his work ethic. TD was talking about being around him and his work ethic. I've never questioned his work ethic. But there's a lot of guys that have great work ethics that aren't great quarterbacks. So I'm not saying, he's got a great work ethic, he's going to be a great quarterback. Just like I'm not saying Brian Callahan, he's an offensive coordinator and the Bengals had success, he's going to be a great coach. I don't know that. So again, if you tell me that I'm pro-Levis, that tells me that you're anti-Levis more than it does telling me anything about myself. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. We'll get to them. 615-737-1025. Let's talk about Twice Daily. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try the new wraps: Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, Nashville hot chicken. They've got them all. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, so when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it is snack time all the time. And they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, new pretzels, and more. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
They see a lot of upside with Will Levis, and they believe that last year he showed flashes of his potential, but obviously it's still too soon in his career to know for sure, can this be the long-term franchise quarterback? So I think their plan this offseason was to surround him with the best possible group so that he could show them, so he could help answer those questions. Only fair to provide him with good protection and good weapons if you're going to make a judgment on him in terms of your long-term. So I think this year is something of an audition for Will Levis. It's possible they get to the end of it and think they may have to look elsewhere, but they wanted to give him the best possible chance to show how good he can be before they make that judgment.
There you go. That was Dan Graziano. No duh. Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. Ian, unless you have a thought.
To the phones.
Phones. Texter into the text line says, when it comes to Will Levis, I feel like he is more likely to be the star than he is to be the dud. I know you mentioned Jake Locker, and it scares me, but I don't see it. Well, I think Levis's ball placement is a gazillion times better than Jake Locker. But I think bad Titan teams were able to beat down Jake Locker. Like, I think Jake Locker got beaten down by those bad Titan teams and the injuries and everything else. But I also didn't cover it, so I don't know. I wasn't here every day. I just watched the games on TV in college. But, I mean, again, my point with the Jake Locker thing is that I can see this not working out.
Are we worried about injuries with Levis?
Yes.
Being a detriment?
Yes.
And how that could really mess up his development, I guess?
Well, there's two things here. Number one, Levis was hurt 2 years ago at Kentucky. He was hurt last year. And then the second thing is you may say, well, that doesn't mean he's injury prone. They just had terrible lines. I mean, Tannehill got hurt last year behind the same line. And, I mean, supposedly Kentucky's line was horrendous in 2022. Well, you don't have a right tackle. So, I mean, it's not like this is going to be the best line.
Because that was one thing about Locker, his poor nickname, the Hurt Locker. He was injured all the time.
That was his nickname?
Some people called him that, yeah, from that movie. I think it was a movie called The Hurt Locker.
Never heard of it. My Jake Locker experience. I was a junior in college the night of the draft. So it's funny the way that it works at Louisville is the school year ends, and then there's a week off for everybody because it's a Kentucky Derby weekend, and then the next week is graduation. And so this was the week off before the Kentucky Derby weekend, and Derby, for Louisville students, Derby partying starts about Wednesday night. So I was home or something the night of the draft. I was in Nashville before I had gone back to Louisville for all the Derby parties. And that was the night that the Titans took Jake Locker. I was at the Buffalo Wild Wings at Nashville West when that happened, and I hated that pick. I want to say Patrick Peterson went off the board a couple of picks before, and I was like, oh, no. And I hated the Locker pick. Then I talked myself into the Locker pick. And that was when I learned, after doing the same thing with Mariota, to stop talking myself into picks. Well, I liked Levis coming out, and I would have taken him 11th overall. So I don't hate this and the way that I originally hated Jake Locker. What did I know at the time about Jake Locker compared to how I actually had watched tape about Levis? One texter says, that texter is wrong telling you that you're the champion for Will Levis. It would be completely irresponsible to crown Levis at this point. He still has a lot to prove. I mean, I really think that what's tough is that everybody wants to feel like they've got the answer. I'm sure there are people in Minneapolis that feel like J.J. McCarthy, we got a winner. Kirk was great, and Kirk could put up numbers, and Kirk could throw the ball down the field, but in those big primetime games, Kirk couldn't win, and now we've got a winner. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves. But that doesn't change reality, and right now the jury is very much out, as that Dan Graziano tape said. The jury's still very much out. This texter actually texted in the 2 o'clock segment, or 2 o'clock hour too, and I do want to read this text because it's very, I don't want to say aggressive, but whatever. Quote, Vrabel was a great motivator, in all caps, not a great coach. Huge difference. Guys would run through a wall for Vrabel, but he was bad at everything else. Evaluating, hiring, and delegating to coaches. Evaluating and retaining players of all types. His entire football philosophy was ancient and ineffective. Stop saying Vrabel's a good coach. It makes you look dumb. He's so bad, and he doesn't even have a coaching job. He is now a consultant. All right, so let's stop here. First off, Vrabel doesn't have a job. That doesn't mean that he's not going to get a job next year. He will. Why Vrabel didn't get a job this year, I don't know. But I would have hired him before I hired Raheem Morris. But Vrabel is a good coach. I mean, I contend everything you're seeing with Peter Laviolette's strengths and coaching style mirrored, in my opinion, Vrabel's strengths and coaching styles. I think they're very similar. And Laviolette left here, went to Washington. That group was old, so they didn't, and had bad goaltending, so they didn't win. Now he's in New York, and I mean, Lord knows if Carolina's going to come back and win this series. But it looks like the Rangers have a legitimate shot at winning the Cup, and they might do it. And I think that there's a really good chance that Vrabel's going to get a job next year, like a Dallas or a Philadelphia or a Buffalo. And if he gets one of those jobs with a quarterback, he's going to win. He'll win right away. And you guys will be shocked because you guys have been going to be sitting there for 2 years laughing about how bad Vrabel sucks, and then he goes somewhere else and wins. I expect Vrabel to win. Now, if Vrabel goes somewhere with no quarterback and no real plan in place or no strong GM, then he's up a creek. But Vrabel's a good coach, guys. Like, stop with the Vrabel sucked! And this is coming from a guy who, A, thought Mike Vrabel should be fired, and B, Mike Vrabel probably hates. I like Vrabel fine. He probably hates me. But he's a good coach.
I mean, he got the Titans to the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill. That's the quarterback. I mean, that's proof enough.
Look at all the winning they did when Vrabel was the coach. It's like, oh, yeah, Vrabel's not a good coach. His strategy was bad. Really? Like the way that they used that loophole of the rules with the punting and the delay of games against the Patriots in the playoffs? You didn't think that was smart? You didn't think that was good coaching? I mean, remember when they played the Jets, Vrabel's first year, and the Jets were trying to melt out the clock around the 2-minute warning, and the Jets had like a 2nd and 1, and Vrabel sent Josh Kalu on the field to be the 12th man, and so it gave him a first down, but what it did was it didn't force Vrabel to use that other timeout. They ended up getting the ball back, and they won the game. That's good coaching. One texter says, you said Vrabel would get hired immediately, too. You have a blind spot for him. He is not a good coach. Please. I had a blind spot for Vrabel? Ian, me?
I mean, at one point, we all thought Vrabel was a very good coach. And
yes,
he is a
when
very
he was
good
winning coach of the year, yes, we thought he was good.
So, yeah, I mean, did he have his issues? Sure. I mean, was I starting to get sick a little bit of the offense and the coordinators, and it looked terrible, and then at times the defense was frustrating with Bowen, but, I mean, he was a good coach.
Here's my problem with Vrabel, is Vrabel, with his attitude, his arrogance, Vrabel's a great motivator. Vrabel's principles, in my opinion, as a coach, are accountability and no entitlement. That you've got to be accountable to your teammates, you've got to be accountable to the coaches, and you can't be entitled. Everybody's treated the same, whether you're Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, or Khalif Raymond or Nick Westbrook-Akine. Which is why a guy like Derrick Henry or a guy like Ryan Tannehill or a guy like Jeffrey Simmons works so well with Mike Vrabel. You don't see Jeffrey Simmons out there talking about how great he is. And that's why a guy like Tier Tart that wants to be treated like a Jeffrey Simmons isn't liked by Mike Vrabel. But here's the problem with Vrabel, when his main principles are accountability and no entitlement. Mike Vrabel, at the end, was not accountable, and he was entitled. Right? Remember the whole, reporting that Amy Adams Strunk was mad that Vrabel didn't go to her after the New England comments and clear the air. And it wasn't, again, my understanding is that it wasn't so much that she thought Vrabel was taking a crack at them, but just that she expected the head coach to go up to her to say, hey, just so you know, like, it wasn't a big deal, like, it's okay, it's a whatever. And Vrabel didn't do it. And the response, I think this was in the Joe Diana article at The Athletic, was that Vrabel didn't feel like he had to. Like, with all these rumors about Vrabel and Rand don't like each other, and Vrabel didn't feel like he needed to address those issues with the owner. That's entitlement. I'm entitled to not have to go talk to my boss about situations involving me. Okay, a-hole. It's like Vrabel demanded respect everywhere he went. But it's like, you can't win a football game. So why should they, it's like I'm asking him about remember the special teams coach. It's like, oh, yeah, you moron, telling me about my coaching staff. Ah! It was like I'm supposed to, like, he's entitled to me thinking that Craig Aukerman's a good coach. I watched that crap for years. So it's really hard to preach accountability and tell people not to be entitled if you're not going to be accountable yourself and you're going to act entitled like everybody should bow down to you everywhere you go. And that's going to happen at his next stop. He's going to get the job. He's going to motivate them. He's going to set a standard. He's going to win football games. And then he's going to lose football games, act like that, and get fired. And then he'll go somewhere else and do it again. But that doesn't mean he's not a good coach. Laviolette's a good coach. I mean, it's just crazy talk. Noah says Vrabel's greatest weakness will be his inability to evaluate and hire great assistants. He'll never win it all with a weak staff, no matter how many good decisions he makes. So here's where I think this may change for Vrabel in his next stop. And no, I haven't seen it in the text line. I'm sure someone's going to say, this is not Mike Vrabel radio. But this is what the text line wants to. Vrabel did not coach very long before getting the head coaching job. He had coached for like 4 years at Ohio State and like 4 years with the Texans, and that was it. Brian Callahan's been at about 6 different spots. So along the way, Brian Callahan knows other people. So it's like, oh, yeah, I remember Nick Holes from when I was with the Raiders. And, oh, yeah, I know my dad from the Browns. Let's hire him. And, oh, yeah, I know this guy from when I worked here. And, oh, yeah. See, that you can do when Vrabel hadn't been anywhere. So all of Vrabel's assistants came from the Texans and Ohio State. And that's why his next stop, he will have known more coaches because he will have worked in more places, i.e. here. And I guess technically Cleveland. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. We roll along, 615-737-1025. There is a hype surrounding the Titans in week 1, and it is a hype that I am not ready to buy. We'll get to that coming up next here on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. First, though, let me tell everybody, this week's Nashville's best deal is Bavarian Beer House, conveniently located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy beer, food, music, and fun at Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, where it's Oktoberfest every day. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last.
Rookie quarterbacks, 6 of them taken in the first 12 picks this year, if you haven't heard. Caleb Williams gets things started at home against the Tennessee Titans. 1 p.m. Eastern game on Fox, week 1. Watch that, Chris, instead of Giants-Vikings, so I don't have to listen to you every time the Giants have a play that results in positive yardage. It will be Caleb Williams taking on the Titans with a new head coach, Will Levis, in year 2. Caleb Williams, the present and the future for the Chicago Bears. That should be a fun one. And that same day, Jaden Daniels. Late afternoon, Jaden Daniels taking on the Bucs in Tampa to start his career.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that won't be easy. We know the Bucs are good; they're talented, right? Playoff football team, and I look at Caleb Williams though, and look at that one and go, hey, 1 p.m. Tennessee, that doesn't necessarily have the the aura of the toughest place to play, right? They're a new coach and kind of a new team themselves. That's certainly one I think is winnable.
That was Florio and Sims. Let me just say this. The Bears opened as 4.5-point favorites. Apparently Fitz was on yesterday. There's a lot of hype around the Bears and them making the playoffs. And look, the old man used to say you don't win with a rookie quarterback. And while there are exceptions to that, most times when you win with a rookie quarterback, it's a team that babies its rookie quarterback with a great defense and they run the ball. Joe Flacco as a rookie. Ben Roethlisberger as a rookie. Those guys dink and dunk, turn around, hand the ball off, play great defense. And then they develop and they leave the nest as great passers. The Bears are going to try to sling it with Caleb Williams. I am not buying the hype. Brad has been waiting patiently and is up next here on Stillman & Company. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Brad?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call. I was trying to see what your take is going to be on the defense this year. We talked a lot about the offense, but, the last few years I feel like our line's been really strong, and I kind of don't care who we had in the backfield because if our D-line is doing what they're doing, I don't think we needed a talented secondary. Now it kind of feels like our line's a little bit weaker than 21 and 22, but we have a really upgraded secondary. So when TD was talking about what to expect this year, he mentioned Greg Williams. That's about a complete 180 from a strategy standpoint that I've seen from a defense in a while. So what do you think the defense is going to be putting on the field this year?
No, I hear you. I appreciate your call. I mean, that is where Denard Wilson comes from, is that Jeff Fisher, Greg Williams, Jim Schwartz, kind of the things that used to be done here back in the day. So here's what I'll tell you. There's too many question marks for me on defense to say it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be bad. But I am worried about the inside backer position just because of the amount of tackles that an inside backer is going to have to make, and we're banking it on the 106th pick in the draft being able to come right away and do that, or else Jack Gibbons is back on the field, and I don't necessarily like that. I don't know if Devondre Sweat is going to make it or not, right? Like, when he steps on the scale at the start of training camp after he leaves for 5 weeks or whatever it is, what's the number going to be? If it's 350 and Sweat's head is in the right place, he's going to be a good player right away, and you may be able to do those things up front with that good secondary to really take advantage of quarterbacks. If Sweat's on the PUP list because he can't pass the physical or can't pass the conditioning test, well, then they got some problems and depth issues of not being able to replace Danico Autry, who was a great player on the defensive line. So it's not a cop-out, but I am just got a lot of question marks here on the defense. All right, so it is the day after they release the schedule. It is not a yearly tradition on this program, but it is kind of what everybody else does, so we're doing it. TD did it earlier today. He came up with 9-8. Chase and Joe. Chase was 9-8. Joe was 10-7. Robbie was 7-10. Joe was 6-11. Game by game, win-loss, win-loss. How do the Titans do? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Okay, so we do this, it's a schedule day tradition. And since, we're out early today for Vandy baseball, good luck to them. Let's do it now. Let's just go through the Titans schedule. I heard Robbie and Joe do it this morning. We had TD do it earlier today. Let's just go through the schedule. And let's pick it. Now, this is not the official predictions. The official predictions, we call them the expectations on this program. That is always the eve of training camp. Because, look, the Titans are probably going to add a safety and all kinds of stuff. All right, so let's start. Week number 1, Titans at Chicago, noon start on Fox. All these games are pretty much noon anyways, but week 1 at Chicago. I'm going to pick Chicago, even though I don't buy the Chicago hype and I don't like Caleb Williams. I just can't get over the fact that the Titans are absolute ass in week 1. I mean, I've been thinking about it. I just keep thinking about all the games that the Titans have blown. And, again, different coaches, different quarterbacks, different teams. But, they lost to the Vikings with Sean Hill as the quarterback, 1 year to start the season. They lost to a bad Raiders team 1 year to start the season. They lost to the Dolphins in that 8-hour game, and Delaney Walker broke his ankle to start the season. I mean, other than going to Cleveland and annihilating the Browns in 2019, every opener they've played, they've been terrible, including the opener that they won in 2020 against the Broncos that they were awful in. So I got to pick Chicago there. Okay, week 2, the Jets. Now, we need to root for the Jets in week 1 when they play San Francisco because we like them to get fat and happy. I don't think they're going to win that game. So they'll go against the Titans in week 2. I'm very tempted to take the Titans here, but I'm not going to. I just think the Jets defense is too good and Aaron Rodgers will score enough points. I'll take the Jets in week 2. Okay, week 3. Titans are hosting Green Bay. Now on paper, Green Bay looks like the best team that the Titans will play in the first 4. They got an over-under Vegas win total at 10.5. I think the Titans are going to win that game because we always see that early in the season where a team's 0-2 and it's like, oh God, it's over, and they're playing this team and those teams always, fight to keep their season alive and the hope alive and everything else. And so I think they're going to win that Green Bay game. Plus, I think Green Bay is going to start the year 2-0 because I think they're going to beat Philadelphia and Brazil. And then I think they're going to beat Indianapolis at home. So I think after that, 2-0, they'll be feeling themselves. Titans 0-2. The 2-0s versus the 0-2s always take the 0-2, so I'll take the Titans there. The Monday Night Football game against the Dolphins, I'm taking the Titans. The Dolphins are not only traveling from Seattle. So they go to Seattle. They got to fly all the way back. Granted, they get an extra day because it's Monday Night Football. But Tua Tagovailoa absolutely freaking sucks in prime time. Last year, including the Kansas City playoff game, over the last 2 years, prime time, 2-8 for the Dolphins. 2-8. Anytime they play somebody good, not that you're somebody good, but anytime they play somebody good, the Dolphins stink it up, and especially in prime time, and they stunk it up versus you in prime time. So I'm going to take the Titans to win that game on the road at Miami. So now you're 2-2. Titans have the bye, which I don't love. Indianapolis at home. Remember last year the Titans absolutely blew that Indianapolis at home game, and they did it because Craig Aukerman got fired afterwards. I'll take the Titans. I like what Indianapolis has done, but I'm going to take the Titans simply because Indy's got a really weird stretch to start their season. They are at Jacksonville the week before, and so I'll take the Titans. Titans at Buffalo the next week, they're not going to win that game. Titans at Detroit the next week, they're not going to win that game. So the Titans are now 3-5, which, quite frankly, is better than I probably thought it was going to be. And again, on the road at Buffalo, Will Levis ain't winning that game. I mean, make of it what you will. Okay, New England. So now you're at New England week 9. New England is absolutely terrible. And not only is New England terrible, but they really did nothing to address how bad they were. Really what they just did was they just blamed Bill. They just basically said, yeah, Bill sucks. Like that's what they did. They fired Bill. They elevated a coach. They elevated a guy in the front office to kind of run the team. They got rid of Bill and Mac Jones. Drake May by week 9 will be starting. I don't know if he'll start week 1. A lot of these quarterback people are convinced he won't be. But whether it's Brissett or Drake May, they both stink. And May is, I think May's going to be good, but he's going to stink right now. So the Titans at home against the Patriots, that's a win. So now you're 4-5. 4-5, not bad. 4-5 through the first 9. Again, remember the Packers were 6-8 last year when they got to Christmas. At the Chargers, week 10. The Chargers have no wide receivers, but they do have the tackle that I really like. I'm going to take the Chargers only because the Titans never, ever, ever, ever win at the Chargers. I don't think the Titans have won at the Chargers since they've been the Titans. I don't. I'm trying to think. I don't think they have, and plus they have the better quarterback. Minnesota at home, week 11. I am not a believer in J.J. McCarthy. I think you've got the DBs to kind of work on Justin Jefferson. Will be a close game, but I'll take the Titans. So now that puts you at what? 5-6. I believe that's right. At Houston. Again, divisional games are always kind of weird. In Houston, I was a little surprised by their win-loss total at 8.5. Houston plays at Dallas the week before on Sunday Night Football. They play at Detroit. On Sunday Night Football. Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football against Dallas. Back-to-back primetime games. And then it's the lowly Titans. Stuff. Screw it. I'll take the Titans. 6-6 after the Houston game. At Washington, 7-6. I can't be picking 7 wins. Green Bay, Miami, Indy, New England, Minnesota. Okay, that's 5. Houston 6. Washington 7. 7 wins for the Titans. Good Lord, I feel like the count on Sesame Street. Jacksonville at home, week 14. Last year they got embarrassed at Jacksonville, and then they beat them that last week of the year. Jacksonville not coming off of a bye. They're coming off of a home game against Houston. I'll take Jacksonville. So that puts you at 7-7. Cincinnati at home, I'll take Joe Burrow. So you're 7-8. At Indy. Here's the thing. If you're 7-8 with the last 3 games at Indy, at Jacksonville, at Houston, you could win the division probably. In all seriousness. Because at 7-7, you go 10-7, and that's probably good enough with the division wins. I'll take Indy at home. I'll take you at Jacksonville. And so that puts you at 8. Oof. This last game, Houston. Off the top of my head, I don't think the Titans are a 9-win team. I think that I'm a total homer if I say this. Plus, I already have the Titans beating Houston the first time. So I'll go Houston, and thus you finish the year 8-9. But even then, I'm a little surprised by that. I'm a little surprised I went 8 wins. I heard Robbie and Joe. I think Joe had 6 this morning. Robbie had 7, and I was like, homers. But this is the whole point of schedule day. This is why you go through it. I think you're going to beat Washington and New England and Minnesota and all those rookie quarterbacks. And this isn't the murderer's row that you had a couple years ago when the schedule came down and your schedule included the 2022 season. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert. That's not your schedule this year. Dak Prescott was on that schedule. I'm not a huge Dak Prescott guy, but it is what it is. So, Ian, I feel like a homer. I feel like a total homer picking the Titans to win 8 games this year. 8-9 is the schedule day prediction. That is not the official Stillman and Company expectation, which we will set right on the eve of training camp, which we always do. But 8 wins. Not bad. They won 6 last year. And the whole reason why I thought the Titans were going to be good last year was because I just figured in my head there was no way that the offensive line could be worse than it was the year before. And lo and behold, the offensive line was actually worse than it was the year before. I'm not going to say there's no way the offensive line can't be worse than it was last year, but I have a really hard time believing that it'll be worse than it was last year. So that might be good enough, unless Levis absolutely sucks. Plus, there will be some people that see me picking the Titans against the Dolphins, and they'll say that that's a total homer move. Let me just say this. If you've listened to this program, you know there is no bias against Tua, right? Like, if you know me, you know that I'm not anti-Alabama. I'm not anti-Hawaiian because I loved Mariota. I'm not anti-Dolphin because I like the people of Miami. I don't care about the Dolphins. They're not a team that I grew up hating. They're not a team I grew up rooting for. I have no bias. I think Tua sucks, especially in primetime. So that's our schedule day, game by game. There we go. Titans 8-9 on this program for whatever that's worth. All right, we're out early today. That's going to do it for us. Vandy Baseball coming up next. Good luck to them. Stillman and Company. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2.